What is up, everybody, and welcome to the REIL Talks podcast. My name is Mike Singletary.
And I am Frank Chen, and we are going to be your hosts. And what we're going to do is break down what it takes to live life on your terms through entrepreneurship, specifically real estate investing.
So we're going to hit it hard, the good, the bad, and the real, because that climb, as any entrepreneur knows, is never smooth. So let's get real.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the REIL Talks podcast. Excited that you're here. This is going to be your host today, Frank Chen. I know usually you see two handsome fellows here. We still got that. Well, the one that we're missing is Mike. That's okay. Some of these podcasts, it'll just be me. Sometimes it'll just be Mike. It'll be together all the occasion. Want to switch it up, keep you guys on your toes. You know what I mean? But today we do have a very special guest for you, and it's a topic that I'm personally been curious about. Being in the education space for 14 years, it's a constant challenge that I hear with newer investors breaking into the space, and that's really about picking up the phone. Picking up the phone, because there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to be made by just picking up the phone. So we're definitely going to be doing a deep dive on that. And man, do we have the expert to show you guys how to do that correctly. His name is Chris Logan. He owns and operates a 7-figure virtual real estate wholesaling company based out of Tampa Bay, Florida. Holla, holla to my Tampa Bay people. No, he believes the best deals are not in your backyard. I know, it's to the contrary, right? We have a lot of people saying, hey, just look in your own backyard. And that your next 20K is just a phone call away. Was that intended to rhyme, Chris?
Maybe a little. Maybe
it is. And what's really cool is that he's using this through a virtual wholesaling made simple approach. Now, Chris is passionate about showing new wholesalers how to wholesale their first house within 30 days, even if they have a full-time job, no team, no experience, and have less than 1K a month or 1K a month for marketing. So if that's you, you're in the right place today. If you have students like these, or these kind of challenges or objections that come into your education circle, we have the solution for you today. So listen carefully. I'm not going to tell you to take notes because you're probably driving, you're probably listening to this somewhere, but definitely you want to pay attention throughout the whole call today. We're going to do a deep dive. Welcome to the podcast. What's going on, Chris?
Wow, what an introduction. I appreciate it. Really excited to be here and to drop some value bombs for the audience.
Absolutely, man. And Chris, I want to really dive into the lifestyle real quick, because I know you had some big news this year. You just became a dad, first kid. Tell me about it. How's it coming along? You know, balancing a business, balancing a newborn. What's life looking like right now for you?
Yeah. So, we were blessed about 3 weeks ago, almost a month, with having a brand new baby boy. We're super excited about it. Thank God he's healthy and everything's going along well. The first 2 weeks of a newborn, it's a big adjustment. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. Like my wife and I, Heather, you know, she and I have been used to kind of going and coming as we please, doing whatever we want to do. Hey, you want to go to this restaurant? You want to do that?
Oh yeah.
And then we have a newborn in the mix, and that completely changes, at least for a little bit, right? So sleep's been a little challenging in this first cycle. We actually nicknamed this. I've heard the first 3 months are the worst. So my wife and I actually nicknamed this period in time the crucible, because if we can get through the crucible, we can get through anything, right?
Very true. Very true. Curious, it's funny when you're a new parent, you can't help but get unsolicited advice from all the other parents out there. What's the number one piece of advice everybody's been giving you over these, other than this is going to be the hardest 3 months of your life?
Yeah, I would say the number one piece of advice that people have been giving us has really been about giving yourself permission to be overwhelmed, right? Because during this time, it's just, you know, you're not getting much sleep. My wife and I, like, the great thing is, you know, we've been not only together, we've been married for 8 years, been together for 10, I believe. And we've been in business together for the last 10 years, right? And so the fact that we work really well in business, just like we leverage the partnership in our day-to-day operations and our wholesaling business, we really like to work together as new parents to like take shifts and make sure each person gets enough sleep and things like that. It's really tough, but we split it up into 2 shifts. She takes the first shift, I take the second one.
Nice.
And we've been dividing and conquering like that. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, you know, feel alone when it comes to facing challenges, or, you know, like all the new experiences that come along as a new parent, but just giving yourself permission to be overwhelmed, and yourself permission to say, you know, if this doesn't get done today, like the world's not going to fall apart, right? And being patient with yourself, I think that's like the biggest takeaway that I could have from other people, and the most helpful advice that we've gotten.
I love that. I love it. Permission to be overwhelmed. Yeah,
Yep.
I was there. I lived in that. I lived in that suck for a little bit, but at the same time, I got to watch that little baby goo goo gaga, and man, was that a cute experience. So
It's all worth it. You know,
it really is.
There's so much going on, right? And you get really overwhelmed at some points, but when you held your baby in your hands and you're kind of like looking down and you're just like, man, it's all worth it, So
Well, I'm gonna add myself to that list of unsolicited advice, and I'll just say this: don't be scared to leave with that baby when they're that small. I would say most people are like, oh, the germs or this and that, and like, believe it or not, this is the time they sleep always.
Yeah,
It only gets harder later. Once they start waking up and raising havoc, man, you're the guy who's like, I got to go outside the restaurant and like stand outside while my wife is eating by herself.
Yeah,
in there,
Yep.
dude. Feeling like an adult again is like probably the best, and it snaps you back into reality. I'm wishing the best for you guys. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Excited. So let's dive into business. You know,
Yeah,
what I mean?
sure.
I think one of the challenges I always hear is that people hate picking up the phone. New investors are always trying to find ways to automate the process or hire a VA. And even though they have zero experience or know how to train this VA, they're like, oh, I don't want to do it. What have you typically seen, and how do you help the people who come into your ecosystem solve that limiting belief? Share your wisdom with us, please.
Sure. Yeah. So one of the biggest things that I find that people have the hardest time with when making calls is getting started, right? Because they're sitting there, they're staring at this ugly beast, this phone, right? And they're like, shoot, I gotta pick that up and I gotta call someone I don't even know. What if they curse me out? What if I don't have the knowledge or answer to a certain question they have? Like, I don't want to look stupid. Like, what if they don't like me, or what if I trip up? What if I mess up? Are they going to know that I'm not experienced? All those questions like go through people's mind, right? And there's a few things that I tell people. Number one, the first call is the hardest to make. So get that out of the way as quickly as possible, right? Just pick up the phone. The longer you sit there and think about how bad it's going to be, right? And by the way, it's never as bad, not even close to as bad as you think it's going to be. Your mind does this thing where it like snowballs all of these what ifs, big monster standing in front of you. And you're like, I don't know, I'm going to overcome that, right? So the best way to defeat that is to not even let it happen. Just sit down, pick up the phone and make the first call. Who cares if you bomb it? It does not matter. You got the first call out of the way. Great. Now we can move on to that next call, right? So that's the very first thing. The second thing I tell people is you're never going to run into these people at the grocery store. You're not going to be sitting in produce, grabbing an apple, and they're like, hey, you're the guy that called me and messed up on that question or didn't know the answer to that question, Never going to happen. You're never going to see these people. You're never going to hear from these people ever again. So if you mess up on the call, who cares? And you know what the best part is? The best part is the majority of sellers, 99% of sellers are not in real estate, right? I don't even know if that percentage is accurate. That's just what I'm thinking, right? 99% of sellers are not in real estate. So when you call them and you mess up, they don't even know, right? You could go to a one-day seminar for an hour or 30 minutes and have more knowledge, 95% more knowledge than the average seller out there, right? So just keep that in mind, right? Because they don't know that you messed up. And if they don't know, you're good. Play it off. Just keep it rolling.
What are your opinions about scripts? I feel like everybody totes those around. Some people are natural talkers, right? And other ones are like, man, I need to read something, but then they sound like they're reading something.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on scripts, and how do you help people navigate that?
I live and die by scripts. So that's the next thing with my students is I have them make sure they have a script, because a script is more of like an outline. It's how the call is going to go. Okay. So what's really difficult to scale is random activity. So if one way you call a seller, you talk to him, the call went great and you got the lead or you got the contract, fantastic. In the next call, you completely change what you said or change it a little bit different here and there. And maybe you're like, oh, shoot, I shouldn't have said that. It messed up, right? So giving you a script is giving you confidence. So if you have an outline of what you're going to talk about with a seller in front of you on every single phone call, it makes every call more systematic and less random, and you can get more consistent. And if you have consistent activity, then you can take a look at that and say, okay, it's taken me 30 calls to get a contract or 100 calls to get a contract. So now I know that that's what it's going to be, right? Because you did the process the same exact way. It's like McDonald's, right? McDonald's doesn't make a burger different every single time. McDonald's, they crank out volume because they make the burger the same way every single time, and they have process in place for that. So scripts are like treasure maps, right? It helps lead you to the gold, which is the contract, and that's what you want. So have it in front of you on every single call.
Any advice to people who maybe, aren't able to, buy a course or have someone just give them a script? Are there any like cool tips for them on like how to create a script themselves? Are there any key components that we should include in there as that roadmap when we enter these kind of the gauntlet of a negotiation or something?
Yeah, well, something just because I think this could be a lot of value to your audience, I'm going to go ahead and give you our cold calling over the phone script. And that you can just give away to your audience. So I'll give that to you at the end of the episode here. But yeah, so that'll help, right? But if you don't have that for some reason, and you're putting together your own script, the biggest thing to remember is the first 7 seconds of the call is critical to grab their attention. Okay. Now, there's a few things that you don't want to do in the beginning of the call. So let's get in what you don't want to do. The first thing you don't want to do is you don't want to say, I'm sorry. You don't want to apologize. Too many people do that. They pick up the phone. They're really hesitant. They call, so, hey, is this John? Yeah, hey, John. Hey, I'm sorry for giving you a call, but my name is so. What?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Why apologize if you provide opportunity for someone? You have to really believe that those people, it's a blessing for them to take your phone call because you don't know what they got going on behind the scenes. They may be in a world of turmoil. They may have all these bills stacking, they lost their job, things are kind of crazy. And you could be that blessing in disguise where you pick up the phone, you call them, you're the right person, the right time, and you can help them, right? You can make an offer to them that allows them to get the cash from their house and move on to that next chapter in their life and possibly avoid a costly foreclosure. So something that really helps when you're making calls is truly believing that it's a blessing for these people to be receiving your call, right? That's number one. You have to have that belief, okay? Because you really are a blessing no matter how much or how little you know, right? Number two, when you're calling, you want to make sure that you get some very quick points out of the way in your first 7 seconds, because that's the time you have to capture their attention. So who you are, why you're calling, and how you can help them. In the first 7 seconds of the call, you want to say who you are, why you're calling, and how you can help them. Hey, hope I have the right phone number. This is great. Is this John? Yeah, hey, John. My name's Chris, and I was calling about your property at 123 Main Street. Yeah, 123. What about it? Well, I come across a lot of properties in that area, and I was actually looking to see if you would accept a cash offer on that property there, or consider a cash offer on your property there. So boom, what did I say? I said who I was, why I was calling, and how I could help them, right? And if you do that in the first 7 seconds, then you will immediately grab their attention and quickly figure out if it's going to be a seller that you can move forward with or not, or is going to be a good candidate for you to work with.
Let's role play for real quick. Okay. I'm going to put you on the spot, right? And it's like, I get these calls all the time, and I'm an investor, and these are properties I'm not selling to begin with. So what's the quickest indication if you ask that? It's like, hey, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
What's a cool pivot to kind of keep them on the phone, or at least kind of walk them down that next, engagement?
Yeah. So one of the things that I tell all my coaching clients is that you never want to convince a seller to sell. Okay. So if they say they're not interested, I don't really pursue that much more, because it's a volume thing. You want to get to the next person. But what I do ask them, say, no problem. Do you know anyone else? Do you have any other properties you want to sell? Maybe something that needs to be remodeled, and if they say no to that, say, okay, no problem. Do you know of anyone that wants to sell on your street, or people that you want them to sell? Maybe it's a property that's in need of repair right next to you, anything like that? No, I don't know any of that. Okay, well, thanks so much. Have a great day. And I move on to the next call. So the first thing you want to ask in that situation, if someone says they're not interested, is do they have any other properties? Because you never know. They could have an entire portfolio of properties that they're working with, that maybe the one you called isn't the one they want to sell because that's the house they live in, but they do have 3 more. I can't tell you how many deals we've gotten from that, and where we've gotten like 2-3 deals from it. And if I hadn't asked that question, it would have never came up.
That's right. And I think that's a really cool way of, like, a lot of times when someone closes the door, like, oh, I guess it didn't work out. There's, when you have this kind of experience, you're able to kind of, like, I always do, use this analogy of when God closes the door, he opens the window. It's kind of a thing, is you got to look for the windows of opportunity after every no. And I believe that just makes you a stronger caller. And every response that you get could lead to an opportunity, right? Yep. So that's very, very cool that you do that. Now, I really want to dabble in this too, because you're talking about picking up the phone yourselves, but you also run a very successful virtual wholesaling business, right?
Yep.
So day one, Chris is calling people. What happened in your past that kind of allowed you to start transitioning into more of a virtual model, building teams, and what absolutely needed to happen to you before you're able to actually successfully do this?
Yeah. So transition to virtual, like we were blessed to be able to do that 2 years before COVID. So by the time COVID happened, we were already settled in the virtual model. So where there was a lot of investment companies are really struggling because they didn't know how to do virtual. Sellers wouldn't let them in the house. They didn't want to shake anybody's hand for a long time. I mean, that went on for 2 years pretty much,
Right.
And so a lot of people were really badly affected by that. And so what made us want to transition 2 years earlier was the fact that so at that point, we transitioned to virtual. I was doing disposition. So I was selling properties, and my wife, Heather, she was doing acquisition. So she was calling all the sellers, getting properties under contract, things like that. And there were certain weeks where she would go on 15 appointments in a week. And by the end of the week, she would be exhausted from driving to all these sellers' houses, to mention going into some sketchy areas, which I had some concerns over. She had this one area she went into where a seller had a gun sitting on a table when she went in the house. And so there's all these things, right? And that's the more serious side of things, right? And then you have the side where it's like, let's say a seller says, yes, I'm going to be home. You drive to their house. And then the seller who said they're going to be home, guess what? They're not home. Then they say, oh, I'm running late. I'll be there in the next 30 minutes. Can you wait around? You wait around 30 minutes. Oh, I'm not going to be there, right? So then you do the drive of shame back home. And so, if you're sitting in rush hour traffic and all that, we just thought about it like, man, we're spending so much time driving back and forth to all these houses and meeting with these sellers and going into these unsafe situations, right? It just makes sense to do it over the phone. What if we could take that same amount of time that we were investing driving all around and invest that into calling sellers and talking with leads? Like we would do more deals. And that's exactly what happened. And once we transitioned to virtual and we got it completely dialed in and we started cold calling sellers, our first month we were fully settled into, actually it was our third month, fully settled in, 2 contracts on the board. And that was solely from reinvesting that time from driving in sitting in traffic, waiting on sellers into calling leads. Because now we could get more done, we could get more leads in, and it just streamlined everything.
So having been on both sides of that spectrum, right? Doing the manual work, physically going to properties, meeting up sellers, that's a lot of where people begin. Is what you're saying is is the grass greener if I'm able to do this virtually and just not be afraid to pick up the phone?
Exactly. Yeah, no, the grass is definitely greener. I mean, both sides have their pros and cons, right? So the pro about meeting sellers in person is, you will have a higher closing ratio in person. It's like 75. I think the closing ratio in person is like 75%, I believe. So if you have 4 appointments, you should probably get 3 of them. Something like that. Over the phone, I want to say it's around 55 to 65%. So you do see a little bit of a drop, right? But you got to ask yourself, okay, I get a little bit of a drop, but if I can get more leads now and I can make more calls, then I can do more deals, right? So if you're someone who has a very, very small marketing budget and you don't know how to go virtual, then yeah, maybe local is good for you, right? But you want to transition to virtual because virtual is a lot easier. It's more flexible. You can do it from anywhere. You can do it from your home. You don't have to drive to all these properties. And especially if you have a full-time job, you don't want to be working all day and then come home and then drive to all these different properties. You just want to be able to pick up the phone and run business from your home. And so I recommend if we could start all over again from the very beginning, I would definitely have started virtual versus in person because all the houses you have to walk into that are just completely like, not very good to walk into, right? And then you have all the time wasted in traffic and everything like that. So I would definitely start virtual if I was starting over from day one.
That's usually one of our questions towards the end. Like, what would you do? What would you tell your younger self, right?
Yeah.
I love that question, but that's true. Like many of the time it's a challenge for a lot of new investors. Like, is virtual even really possible, right? Like, what is all the process that goes in place? If I do want to bring that, let's dive into that real quick.
Sure.
You obviously have built some better systems to help, mitigate the turnaround for a caller, right? I'm assuming you and Heather aren't still the people calling every business. You're the ones who's coming in to save the sale if for any reason it gets to that point. But in terms of churn out the volume, let's talk about some of the systems you guys have in place. A lot of the questions people ask, what softwares are you using to call out of? Like, how are you managing your leads? Do I need a CRM when I'm first starting? Think about the mom and pop coming out of this. They're still working an 8 to 5. Another great question we always typically get is, hey, when is the best time to call people? And, let's start there. Like, when's the best call? What is the best time that you've seen people like to call homeowners?
Yeah. So if you have a full-time job, you're actually in luck because the best time to reach sellers is after 1:30, no later than 7:30. If you want to really frustrate some people, call them after 7:30 at night. So the calling window is 1:30 to 7:30, right? So if you get out of work at 5 o'clock, you have 2.5 hours to dial, right? If you get out of work at 4 o'clock, 3.5, and so on, right? If you're going to be calling on Saturdays, I would not recommend calling on Sundays. People get really irritated when you call them on Sundays. And then Saturdays, I would recommend 10:30 till right about 1:30. We have seen success later in the day, but it does drop off, and 10:30 to 1:30 is that time. And again, if you want to irritate someone, call them a little earlier than 10:30 on a Saturday. So
That's so interesting because I've heard other people, and no, that you're right along the line. I think someone said 212. They gave us such an exact number on a call before. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting, but you're within that range.
Don't miss that
People
time.
always think like, oh, we should call them on Sundays because they're thinking about work on Monday and they're
Yeah.
kind of in that mindset because they want to. Not true.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah,
true.
no,
What you're saying.
we don't. Number one, I firmly believe that you, as an entrepreneur, you need to take one day off per week. So that's just on the business owner side because we all need a day to reset. We all need a day to refresh, a break from the hustle, right? So we can mentally prepare ourselves for the next week, think about priorities that we want to tackle, and we want to have focused work coming into the next week because a lot of reasons why entrepreneurs waste a lot of time and not get things done, or they end a week being like, man, I didn't get anything done this week. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who felt like they worked 7 days, but they spun their wheels and they didn't get anything done, right? So that's because they're not taking time out to think, to list out the top 3 priorities for the day, then go into the next day. You know, my dad always used to say, the true champion plans his day the night before.
Oof.
So that's what I would do. You got to plan your day the night before, because if you do, then it's predictable. You know exactly what you need to do, knock out the top priority. But if you don't plan your day the night before, then you're going to be stuck in this everything's important, but nothing's important. And you're going to reach the end of the week being like, man, why didn't I get anything done? That's the reason. So revenue in first position, baby.
I love that. I love that. And I know I was just about to say that too. It's your day starts, you start planning the day before.
Yeah.
Set you up success. If you're like, oh man, if you wake up the next morning, you're already dreading making phone calls and you're not saying how many phone calls you need to make versus the day before. It's like, hey, I'm going to make 5 calls before 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'm going to start, or not 9 a.m. tomorrow, around 1:30, right? Around 1:30. Then it's top of mind before you, and guess what? It's going to be top of mind when you wake up. And I think there's a lot of power in that. So I think that's great advice. Okay. So system processes, training, like for those out there, let's give them, I don't want to say it's impossible, but I do believe in order to automate, you must first know how to do it, starting at the ground floor, right? That's the whole idea, the concept behind it. But for those mentality of people like, I just want to hire someone who has the experience. Do those like companies, those VA staffing agencies, do those exist? You know, and what can someone expect to pay if they really want someone who has the experience, who they really can just plug, if they just want to write a check and solve the problem, right? Like, what have you experienced with that kind of, those type of relationships?
Yeah. So I would caution you with that, right? Because, you know, I know that there's a lot of people who have limited time, they want to get started and everything like that. And you can definitely get started doing this in as little as 2 hours a day, right? So if you have 2 hours a day that you can consistently put towards, it doesn't matter if it's from 12 to 1, if that's the time that you have to work with, you work with it, right? Or if you have 5 to 6 and that's the time you have to work with, you work with it, right? So you work with the schedule that you have to work with. That's what I did when I was in corporate America, transitioning to wholesaling. Only time I had available was from 12 to 1. And then when I would come home, it was from like 7:30. That was all the time I had, right? But I worked that time until eventually I worked my way out of corporate America and was able to do it full time. But when it comes to outsourcing right away, the reason I don't recommend that, right, is because you don't know what to look for. You don't know what success looks like. Are they doing a good job? Or are they not doing a good job, right? Because you've never ran the process yourself before. So what I recommend doing is do the process yourself. To like before you outsource calling, right? Get at least 3 deals under contract yourself, right? Get 3 deals under contract. That way, you know how many calls it takes you to get a deal. You know how many leads it takes you to get to a deal. You know the most common objections. So if the person you hire says, hey, the seller's talking to me and they're giving me this objection here, like they're saying that, the person passed away and they can't sell now because the probate's not going to be done in 90 days, right? Now, let's say you didn't do this yourself first. You wouldn't really know how to handle that. But now that you are doing it yourself first, or you know how to overcome the objections, you can say, hey, that's simple. You can tell them that we can lock up the contract right now and we can close as soon as it's done. We'll work on their timeline. So when you do it yourself first, you can see the objections you're going to get. You can see the activity, so you know what to look for to become successful. And that way you can train someone to help them become better, because you can't train someone to do something you haven't done yourself.
And that, I feel like, is the core of what we need to like bring home here is leadership begins with you understanding the process. And I think I see too many new investors trying to skip the line and being like, well, what's the one CRM that's going to do this all for me? And just send all the emails out. Well, like, what email? Like, do you even know what to say in those emails? Well, you can give me the templates. And it's like, well, you still don't know what's going on in those emails or what the intention is behind them. Same thing with the script. Objections coming your way. Yep, go ahead. Sorry. Mm-hmm.
No. You were hitting on such a great point. I was like, man, like, I got to add this to it, right?
Yeah, please.
So, like, people want to skip the valley and go straight to the mountaintops, but you can't, right? Because in the valley is where you're earning your stripes. That's where you're learning. That's where you're getting all the wisdom, right? So you can handle the mountaintops. If you just say, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and outsource this right away, I'm telling you, it's going to blow up in your face. Like, the worst thing you can do in business is scale too quickly, right? Or scale without really knowing what you're doing. And the end result is just not going to be something you're going to be happy with. So I would definitely do it yourself. Then, after your first 3 deals, then find somebody else. But I would avoid call centers like the plague. Okay. There's a lot of call centers out there. People are like, yeah, I'm hired this call center and they're going to do this. Don't do that, because what they do is those reps in the call centers, maybe not all of them are bad, but the ones I've experienced have been pretty rough. They have each rep working like 100 hours a day, and they're not going to be productive, right? They're going to be productive maybe for the first couple of weeks you have them. And then after they add a few more clients to that same rep, right? They're making calls for them too. You're going to notice their productivity go like this. So I recommend self-hiring. A great site you can go to is outbounders.com.
Ooh.
If you go to that website, there's people on there. The site is strictly dedicated to hiring people to make calls for you. Right. And you can go on there, you can filter by nationality, you can filter by the hourly wage that you're comfortable paying. You usually want to start off paying someone between $4 and $5 an hour to start. And you want to have them work 20 hours a week. If you start someone at 30 hours a week, they're going to get the same level of productivity from 20 hours, but it's going to taper off those last 10. So don't start people off too high. Right.
Old right there. We always get asked, well, what's a good amount to pay people?
Yeah.
And are you paying any type of like commissions off of like any like good setters, or like do you have setters, or are they actually closing people on the phone? Like, where's the handoff off from that role? Like,
great question. So in the beginning, when you're first doing this yourself, you're going to be the one talking to the seller. So you're going to be their direct, you're gathering the information and then making the offer. But after your first 3 or 4 deals, you're going to be at a point where you can say, okay, I'm handing this off. So at that point, what you want to do is you basically want to have, you want to provide some type of web form, web caller. Okay. And a free option that I recommend is Podio. Podio is a great customizable CRM. You can adjust it to however you want. You just need something simple. A lot of people go out and buy these $400 and $600 a month CRMs. When they first start, they hamstring themselves and it's terrible. You don't need an expensive CRM. You don't need the next flashy object that comes out that tells you it's going to rain leads from the sky. Don't do it, right? Just buy a cheap CRM to start and something where you can store leads. That's all you want to do. There's an option there. You can create a web form. And you just need some very simple questions on there. You want to have the first and last name, obviously, the property address, their phone number. Try and grab their email if you can. You want to ask questions like, what's the main reason you're looking to sell, right? You want to ask them, have they done any remodeling of their house in the last 5 years, right? That lets you know the property condition. You want to ask them, how soon are they looking to sell? And if they're willing to sell within 90 days, that's a really, really hot lead. Okay. And then you want to get the asking price. Okay. And then anything else above and beyond that, you really don't need, because you can find that stuff in public records. You can confirm the bedrooms and bathrooms if you want, but all of that is pretty much all you need. And then basically what your setter will do is he will just submit that lead into your CRM. So Podio, and you can just go in, you can see you have a lead, pick up the phone and give them a call.
I like that.
As far as a phone goes, you can use a free option, Google Voice, if you're just starting, because it's free, right? And then eventually there's services like Smartphone, which is a great plugin for Podio, which allows click to call, but you don't need any of that fancy stuff when you're first getting started.
one software people were saying like Ring Central, like how does that compare to like smartphone? Like people get so stuck in the minutia of
they do.
Choosing, oh, is it this one or this one? Like how big of a difference do these similar softwares make?
So when you're calling leads, so there's two different phone systems you can use. You can use a dialer, which I'll get to in a second, or you can use a one-off phone system like you're talking about, like Ring Central. And that kind of goes into the category of like Ring Central, smartphone, CallRail. All those services are pretty much the same. And it's just a monthly service that includes like 10 tracking numbers to track your marketing. Those services work and those are fine. You can use those. We used CallRail for probably 6 years. But the reason I like smartphone is just because it has a plugin with Podio where I can click the phone number and then it'll call the person. So I like that, right? But you don't need that in the very beginning. Just use good type of free solution. And then as you start to do deals, you can start adding things to your bottom line. You can start adding a phone service like, Ring Central or smartphone, something like that. And the reason you go with those other services because there's more tracking available. You can filter like your call results by the last week. You can also text from those numbers. And so there's just more reporting and tracking where for Google Voice, if you're making calls on that, you can't really see who you called in the last 2 weeks,
There's a hidden point here that I want to highlight, guys, which is, all those other additional features that come with these kind of paid subscription model things, you won't know how to use those features until you've done it yourself. Right?
Exactly.
I always joke around with my team. It's like, I'm infamous for signing up for, like, I have Monday because I'm looking to solve one specific problem in my business, but I'm underutilizing the software almost like 80% of the features. I'm like, oh, how cool would it be to integrate these things? And I realized, like, oh man, I've been paying this for 2 years. I still use the same 1 or 2 features out of the 15 features they offer me.
Absolutely.
But it's important as when you start a business like a startup, it's to run it bootstrap. I love that. I'm very risk averse. And I think people listening to this are also like, well, I don't have a lot of money. And how do I get started? Run a bootstrap business is listening to Chris right here. You don't need these things yet. Get started, have a spreadsheet, find the holes in your business. And then once you've gotten comfortable, then you can start systemizing a little bit and finding the softwares that help, fill those gaps per se. You know what I mean? So that's awesome. Okay. So we got the phone systems. Now you got the handoff using like a web form. Let's kind of unravel this virtual wholesaling business. So we got that first step done. Getting deals under contracts, are you using any type of softwares to kind of automate that process? Is it DocuSign? Is it like, I'm assuming your wife is the agent and then you're the investor. Is it that type of relationship?
Yeah. So one more thing on the phone system.
Please.
So a dialer is, when you start having people dial for you, you want to switch over to a dialer or maybe even start with that if you're going to be called. If you want to get a result as quickly as possible, right? So the Google Voice and those type of voice systems, those are good for calling back leads, things like that. But you'll eventually, if you want to start calling on bigger like lists and extend your reach, calling a lot more people, you're going to want to get something called a dialer. And what that does is it allows you to make hundreds or thousands of calls in the background without you having to physically dial each one. So there's a dialer we use called Ready Mode. It's pretty amazing. There's a discount you can get if you go to riveting.com, RISE dialer.com. I believe it's like $150 a month, and it allows you to make tons of calls and without you having to physically dial each one individually. So, in the beginning, you want to call small lists, like, really highly targeted, motivated lists. And then after that, you want to scale up with calling more sellers. You're going to need something that can dial faster for you. And that's where you would do that. But going back to your question on how do we automate the contracting process? So we just use DocuSign. DocuSign is great. One says yes, they're ready to move forward over the phone. What we do is we ask them if they're in front of their computer. And if they say, yes, I'm in front of my computer, great. I'm going to go ahead and send you over the agreement. We don't say contract. We're going to send you the agreement using DocuSign. And I'd like you to go ahead and review it while I'm on the line here. And if you have any questions, just feel free to ask, and I'll just be right here. Right. And so they sit there, they're going through it. We use a 2-page agreement. A lot of people, when they first get started, they hear like on a podcast or something, go look for your state approved 15-page agreement on Google and then use that. And then you're sitting there, you're looking at this thing. You're like, what the heck? It's like a phone book. Seller asks you something and you're like, I have no idea what that is myself. You both chuckle about it, then you don't get the deal, right? So we made those mistakes. We started off with that agreement. I didn't know what half the stuff was on there first. But we switched over to a 2-page agreement because it's very simple, right? These sellers, usually they're like 60, 70 years old. And if people are going to be making a quick decision like that, you got to remove the barrier, okay, for them to be able to make a decision as quickly as possible. And the biggest barrier that stands in the way of that, especially if you're getting a contract signed over the phone, is a 15-page agreement that you have to sit there through all 15 pages looking at the screen. And, so.
Absolutely. And they use legal jargon to make it sound like it's like, a really powerful agreement. In reality,
and that scares people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So contracts, agreement, now that it's under contract, we talk to the seller, one of the challenges people say is, well, I got to build a buyer's list, or, I could just, drop it to this marketplace and they'll sell it for me. A lot of these, I'm starting to see a lot of these wholesale marketplaces, the off MLS,
That's a new trend that's going on right now.
Is it really? Yeah. And I would love to hear your opinion on that. And, is it a good solution since it's kind of new now, right? It's not, a crowded space yet.
Yeah.
But love to hear your opinions on that. And then for those who have never built a buyer's list, right?
Yeah.
Is that the same kind of concept of I got to pick up the phone and talk to now the buyer side and build up, my rapport there? Or is there, I hate to use the word shortcut, but is there something they can do with kind of in tandem as they're kind of dealing with sellers? How do I build my buyer's list? Where can I go?
Yeah, so there is a shortcut with buyers. So buyers, I'm totally down to give you a shortcut for, right?
Okay.
So
Good.
So I think, as a wholesaler, what you should be doing, you should be building your buyer's list every single day. Okay, that's a mistake that I made in the very beginning, and why it took us so long to build a buyer's list. And it's because we weren't building our buyer's list every single day. Back when we first started, the only thing you could do to build your buyer's list was like go to the courthouse steps and rub elbows with the guys that are buying the auction properties, or put up a bandit sign, a plastic sign that says, we have discounted houses or something like that. And have buyers call you or post an ad in the newspaper or something like that. I'm really not that old, but just those things were like how people got buyers before. But one of the best places you can get buyers is Facebook groups. Facebook groups are amazing. So if you're first just getting started, one of the things I recommend you to join every Facebook group that's in the area that you want to wholesale in. And I want you to start locally, and then you want to go nationally. What does that mean? That means you start out the groups that are geared towards and tailored to local areas. So for instance, if I live in Jacksonville, Florida, I want to target Facebook groups that are Duval County real estate investors, Duval County REIA, REIA, Real Estate Investor Association, Duval County wholesale deals. I want to look for all those key terms, and I want to join every single group, right? And then what I want to do is, after I join all the local groups, then you want to join the more broad groups like Florida real estate investing, right? Or Florida real estate investors, Florida wholesaling. And then from there, you can go beyond that and go to nationwide real estate, and you can join those groups, right? And the whole point of these Facebook groups, if you think about it like fishing, right? All marketing is like fishing. So there's a bunch of little ponds that are out there that all have these types of fish in there, right? Some ponds don't have any fish. Some ponds have more fish than others. So the whole point is taking your bait, knowing the right bait to have, dropping it in that pond, and boom, you're going to get, like, they're just going to hit, and you're going to have tons of people reaching out to you, tons of fish biting, right? So how you do that is you want to put like a post in one of the Facebook groups. You could say, hey, my name is so-and-so. I'm new to the area, building my business. If you want to get hot off-market properties every single week, go ahead and drop your email below, and I will add you to my list, right? Some groups allow that, some don't. So you want to check to make sure like you're in line with the rules, because you don't want to get banned from a group. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, instead of redoing the work, you can also look at other deals that have been posted. So let's say, for instance, you're building your buyer's list in Jacksonville, and you see a lot of people have posted deals in Jacksonville, and people have commented, say, hey, send me more information. I'm a buyer. Send me more information. take down their email, shoot them an email. Hey, I saw you were in the Jacksonville Real Estate Investors Group. You were interested in buying properties in 336 or 332, whatever zip code. And I have properties there, can I add you to my buyers list? I'd love to add you to my buyers list. What's the best phone number for you? And then you add them that way. And that is so quick. One of my coaching clients doing that exact process and a few other things I gave her to make it go a little bit easier. She was able to add 105 cash buyers to her list in 7 days without having any previous real estate experience. And she has a separate business that she runs, just like a full-time job that takes up a lot of her time. So Facebook groups are amazing.
I love that because being in this education space as long as I have, I know people have talked about Facebook groups, but building a buyer's list, that's not, I've heard the ones where put the signs up, hey, that property you're calling about is no longer available, but
I don't
my buyer's list, right? I think that still works. It's just one of those ponds you could baits you could throw out there.
Oh, no, absolutely.
But the virtual model, I don't have to physically go to a hot corner in Texas and put a sign up that gets torn down when it hits Monday.
Risk your life crossing the street.
Right. Or find the bum on the corner who is
in lightning storms.
I don't want to do any bum fights. So this is his corner. I don't want to put anything there. I completely get that. So I love that model. And man, 105 in 7 days. That is impressive.
Yeah.
I think the Tampa market is one of the hotter markets, but I know people listening to this are going to be nationwide. They're going to be in, slow markets, hot markets. But again, you can all do this by just searching the county on Facebook groups, join those. And I agree. Definitely follow the rules. People are, especially if they're an active group, they're sticklers for that stuff. So don't break the rules. You're giving up a lot of opportunity if you do that.
Yep.
Awesome. So we got the buyers, you're obviously funding the deals. That's the A to B, B to C. I'm very curious, what does your current team look like? How many deals are you doing? A lot of people listening is like, I'm just happy if I could just do one deal a month. We give you kind of a rough blueprint of starting that process. Where is your business today? What does your team look like? So people can kind of see what the start and maybe what the finish could look like to run a 7-figure virtual real estate business.
Sure. So when Heather and I first started, obviously it was just she and I. She took care of some things. I took care of some things. She was better suited to talk with sellers. I really like the more logical type of sale, which is talking to buyers. And so we divided and conquered that way. And I would definitely recommend that, especially if you're a couple getting started in real estate. Don't be a business of two acting like a business of one, right? That was something we did in the beginning. Like I went to every I would make offers. She'd talk to buyers. I'd talk to buyers. It was silly because we have two people with two set amounts of time we can work, and we were overlapping each other. So once we divide and conquered, that's when we saw the most success. But as far as what my company looks like today, we've grown our team to, I want to say we have 12 people on our team right now. So we do roughly 60 deals a year, right? And it's been pretty over the last several years, and that's where we're happy with it. We like doing that. The current team we have an acquisition manager, someone who makes calls on our behalf and makes cash offers. We have a disposition manager, someone who sells all of our properties. Sometimes I get involved in that just because I like doing it, but he does it the majority of the time. We have a call center over in Bangladesh where I have a team lead, and he oversees the other 4 callers that we have. So we have 5 people over making calls, and they deliver leads to us. So that's pretty much the team. And then I have an assistant and a few other roles, someone that runs comps for us and things like that. But I mean, that's pretty much what our team size looks like.
Love that. So I got 2 follow-up questions to that. One, what would be the first essential hire for thinking about our 8-to-5er, breaking into this? They've done maybe their first deal, working on their second. What would be the essential first hire?
The very first hire that you need to make is an admin executive assistant, right? And the reason for that is because you got to pull yourself out of the minutia, out of those daily tasks, right? So they can start doing things like automating your marketing campaign, so they can download lists for you. They can upload lists. They can, add people to your CRM. They can send emails for you. All those things. Like there's a lot of back and forth that you have to do when you're wearing all the hats, right? Like I said, you have to download lists. You have to clean up the lists. Like maybe remove certain things from there that you don't want. Like you don't want companies to call on companies. You just want to call on private owners that are sellers. You want to take out all the companies. An assistant can do that. If they need to upload a list to a dialer, or if they need to upload the list to your CRM or whatever the case is, right? Or texting platform, or sending direct mail, at the end of the day, like you just need someone to take over all those tasks. So all you can focus on is two most important things. It's leads and deals. That's it. Right. So I had a saying that when I first started wholesaling in the beginning, I was either talking with sellers or fighting to see sellers in the very beginning. That's the only two things you should be focusing on in the very beginning. Nothing else matters. Just tune everything else out and focus on doing deals. And then after you get your first couple of deals, like Frank said, you can hire a virtual assistant, someone to take over a lot of the admin tasks for you, that anything that gets in your way of calling on leads and doing deals. That's what you need to outsource.
The reason why I went woo is because, I've heard this, many different ways, but sometimes it takes an individual to hear things the same way, different ways, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. And we're like, oh, I get it.
I
now.
need that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think, the number one question we typically get is, who should, like when they're looking to scale and build a team, they always ask, who is my first hire?
Yeah.
And most people think, oh, a cold caller, right? No, it's everyone who is a high achieving, business owner says an assistant. It's your time.
Down.
And then and here's the thing to that. And I see people always make this mistake. It's the same people who have been in the info space forever. And it's like, hey, how's your email list? It's like, I don't have one. Start documenting everything you're doing right now.
Yeah.
If you're an army of one, document everything you're doing, because then these can start being your SOPs. Your admin, your executive assistant can come in and take these tasks and organize them into standard operating procedures, right?
Yep.
These are the things you're going to be training them on anyways. Why wait until after you hire them to start creating it? You can be doing it now because you're the ones that's doing it, right?
That's huge. Documenting.
Document it. People are terrible at it. People have been in the business for 10, 15, 20 years. You're not alone, but that's probably the best piece of advice I can give you.
That's huge.
Okay. Follow-up question. You mentioned Bangladesh. We always get people asking, do they have accents? If someone's gone, it sounds like they're not from here, aren't like, especially the Americans. Do they get pissed off when they hear someone from another country calling them? Like, have you noticed any issues with conversion rates or anything like that with, foreign callers?
Yeah. So, I was actually blessed that we had a unique connection over there, and it's not something I think people can really duplicate in Bangladesh, right? Because there's two sides of Bangladesh. You have the English speaking side that sounds like they're from London, right? And then you have, and we don't hire those guys. Then you have the other side, which sounds like they're from here, from the States, right?
Oh, wow. Okay.
So my call center manager, or my team lead, he grew up in New York and moved over to be with his family over there. So he sounds like he's from here. He was my best caller, right? And then he actually recruits people for me over there, right? And adds them to our team. So he does that. He actually goes to a restaurant, sits down with them, meets them, talks with them, and interviews them like a stateside employee, right?
Wow.
That's why I said what I have over there is kind of difficult to duplicate, but I didn't start there. So keep that in mind, right? So where I started was going to outbounders.com. And the type of reps that I focused on were those that were in South America or places where English was a first or second language, right? The reason I like South America is because 25% of the population, maybe 35% now, of Tampa Bay is Spanish speaking, right? So if you can have someone on the phone that if they say habla español or habla español, they can say, sí, they're like, hey.
Groundbreaker, right? It's an icebreaker.
Yeah, exactly. And then the conversation goes really well. And then even better, if that seller agrees to move forward, they can translate the whole conversation for you, which is amazing.
Wow.
And you'll get deals where nobody else will, because you're going to get a connection with a seller that someone else may not have. So I love people in South America. They're great people. They have very, very small accents. And if they do, it's a little bit of a Spanish accent, which the entire United States pretty much has
comfortable with
that somewhere, right?
Yep.
So that's what I recommend. For as far as the Philippines go, a lot of people want to outsource to the Philippines, and there's a lot of call centers that use reps in the Philippines. And I would say that Philippines workers are amazing for non-client facing activities, right? Because I find that when they're on the phone, they sound very transactional, and it's just not a good fit. I haven't had one caller from the Philippines that has worked out to be a rock star, not one. And we've gone through a lot, right?
Wow.
But every single one that I've put in some type of an admin role or something, they have been amazing. Like nobody can touch some of the people that I have. Like I have a marketing assistant that her knowledge of Excel is just unbelievable. And I have a graphic designer that does some stuff for our content on our social media. And he's amazing. And if I was to have that guy over here in the States, he'd be, $100 an hour more, and
Wow.
$3 an hour or so. So
I got to echo that. And it's really cool is like when we get to do a lot of these calls with really smart guests, I like to kind of share in their experiences. And when I see commonalities, because I'm really big in pattern recognition, and I never really want to just, what's that called? Discount an entire country because of a few experiences, right?
No, not at all. Yeah.
But what people have standard says that they are phenomenal workers, and they all say they're not maybe the best, client facing. And just like any coaching program, any coaches, you may not want to hear it, but we're trying to save you a lot of time, potential money, a lot of turnaround. And I've been hearing a lot of good things as of recent with South American, virtual assistants, believe it or not. Right.
Yep.
And you make a good point. In Texas, I would probably say more than 30% are Spanish speaking now, right? Any border towns on the southwest side, near Mexico, tons of people, Spanish speakers. It's great. It's almost a second language now here.
So it's normal. So that's the whole goal. So nothing against anybody in any other countries, right? It's just you're trying to find someone that can call for you that sounds like they're from here. And in the Philippines, they have a very strong accent that doesn't sound like they're from here. So it's not just the Philippines, it's other places too. Sure. And I found that South America it's South America, there's the air is clear and they sound like they're from here. And people are most receptive to people that sounds like they're from the States, because nobody likes call centers, especially in Florida, when there's a lot of craziness going on, like with a lot of homeowners, like elderly homeowners being taken advantage of by schemes and things like that. Like, you want to have someone on your team that sounds like they're from here, because immediately that red flag goes out the window.
Yeah. Guys, we keep it real here. This has nothing to do with anything black, white, tall, short, big, small. This is what's working in business. This is what's working for real estate companies. These are people. This is working for a company that's doing 60 deals a year. What we want to pour into you is, I'm asking the questions that I typically see when I'm in the FAQs on these workshops, these virtual challenges, and all these things. And it's usually coming from anywhere between 40 to 65 years old, a much older audience. And their number one concern are the questions I've asked you today. So one, thank you so much for diving deep. I think we've left here with a lot of great information. We gave you guys some CRMs to look into once you hit that point, not now if you're just starting. Most important, and I think we've talked about this, you're like the third person who's echoed this, is just get started. I'm hoping this is the third or fourth time if you're following our podcast. This is probably the fourth time you're hearing this now. If you don't want to listen, don't worry. I'll probably do this tomorrow and the next time we do this call. Get started, learn the process, and then build the systems, right? First hire, executive assistant. Third or fourth time you're hearing this again.
Hands down.
Assistant, executive assistant. If you're looking at VAs, definitely start looking at South America. Look at outbounders.com. Awesome. We've never given that out yet. Great resource for you guys. And anything else you guys need regarding kind of starting a virtual business, Chris has done this at scale. I remember Chris was a client of mine, and no one's ever done this before. This tells you what kind of entrepreneur he is. He was like, hey, Frank, what if I could show you, I'll trade you how to start a virtual wholesaling business for your services. At the time, I wasn't ready to take on another venture. So I was like, hey, I love the idea of creativity. But the fact that he can trade that as a service means he's got this dialed in. He understands what it takes to set up, find the right people, create the culture. I follow him on Facebook, and I know he talks a lot about that too, is kind of breathing back into his team, creating an awesome environment to work in. I bet the people who work you love working with you. And that's why they're pushing hard, working hard. So give us an idea, if people need to find out more information about you, I know we got some giveaways. We're going to put that in the description below. We got that script coming your way. Where can people find more information about you, learn about the virtual business? And, here's your time, brother. Shine.
Sure. Yeah. So the best way you can get in touch with me is follow me on Facebook. Facebook ID is CLogan777, CLOGAN777. I'm also on TikTok, Chris Logan REI. But where I feel you can get the most value is join my free Facebook group, Virtual Wholesaling Made Simple. You just go to Facebook under groups, type in Virtual Wholesaling Made Simple. You can see it, join right there. I do a free live training once a week on Thursdays, lasts typically about an hour. And we have some exciting guests that we bring in there as well, and just give away a ton of free value in there. So if you're looking to go for wholesaling, that's where you want to be, and I'll hope to see you on the inside.
I love that. And just so you guys know, what I love about Chris is he hasn't been around like in the info space for years. He's become one of those old jaded gurus who, tells you to do these things, but it's never there. Like Chris loves his community, and I think he's really sincerely interested in growing it together.
Yep.
And being a part of y'all's journey. Anybody in his community, anybody in his ecosystem, he really takes care of his people and makes sure that whatever they're getting into, he's right there making sure they succeed. Now that's a rare thing to find. And that's why I like, people like Chris and what he's trying to accomplish. So make sure to follow him on his journey, follow him on his socials, take advantage of the assets we're going to be sharing with you today. I think we gave you guys quite a few actionable tips. Don't sleep on this, guys. I know sometimes you come out of here, always like give the example of coming to like a Tony Robbins event. You're coming out of that on fire. And then 2 weeks later, you're like back to your, normal self, figure out, man, I just should have gotten started. Don't do that. We're trying to change the game here with this podcast. We want to give you guys actionable tips. You hang up, not hang, well, you probably listen to this on your phone, but you get off these calls, create yourself a maybe quick 1 to 2, 3 checklists, prepare, prep, and apply. And I promise you guys are going to start seeing incremental change. It's not something that changes overnight, but hopefully you can apply these things and start seeing at least a bit of growth every day. And you'll get to that first 20K, that next deal. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thanks, Chris, for your time today. This has been an awesome session. I can't wait to release this and have everybody jump on here and leave all these awesome reviews and comments and this because they love it so much. Take care, guys. We're going to talk to you guys on the next one. Again, show Chris some love. We'll see you guys on the next podcast. Take care, guys. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me, Frank. It was a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys.
So that's a wrap. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I hope you received value from this episode. If so, please share this podcast with your friends so we can help more people just like you. Also, hook up with us on Facebook, IG, and YouTube at REIL Talks. That's REIL Talks. So until next time, keep it cool and keep it real.